Dun, dun, dun. So today I have a bunch of questions, obviously, that I've received ahead of time. So there were a heap of people who sent me emails and asked me questions. I've looked up some of the more detailed questions I found really good answers for, so we'll go through those. Remember that if you guys have any questions during this live class, please put them down in the comments here. I love getting questions from you guys, and this class is all about helping you guys as much as possible right now to learn English. So feel free to ask me anything you would like. If you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up, a love heart. You know the drill, guys. If you wouldn't mind, please share the video. That always pops it up a little bit further in Facebook's algorithm so that people see it. And hopefully it'll show to a few of your friends and family and whoever else might be learning Australian English as well, obviously, guys. So I'm just going to give it a quick share as usual. And then we can get into it, I guess. I guess we can get into it. So Karacha, how are you? Rocio, how are you guys? I guess to chat a little bit before we get started about everything, jump in the status here, have a look at the links. You can get all the free content that I offer to help you guys learn English, to help you learn Australian English. Just click the link in the description. If you want to get the phrasal verb course, the effortless phrasal verb course that I do, you can also use the link in the description. And I guess most importantly, the Aussie English classroom's going through quite a few changes this week. So I'm trying to redo it. I'm going to close down the Facebook group and have that only open for members so that we can do group calls that are going to be organized in that group. So sorry to anyone who hasn't signed up and is currently in that group. The good news is if you sign up this week before the 4th of February, before Sunday, or I guess it'll be the day after Sunday, before Monday next week, you will be able to sign up to the Aussie English Classroom for only $19. After the 4th, it's going to go up to $36.99. So you're going to save $17 if you sign up in the next, 5 days, okay? 5 days. Special note, if you sign up now, that's the price you pay. The price increase will not affect anyone who signed up before that date, okay? So anytime you sign up to the Aussie English Classroom, the amount that it costs when you sign up is the only amount that you will ever pay. It doesn't increase if I increase the price later on. So that's an incentive for you guys to sign up earlier and stay signed up. And it's also a way of me thanking all of the members who started early on and have been following me as I've been developing the classroom, as I've been adding content to it, as I've been expanding it, and obviously polishing my own skills too. So yeah, if you want to sign up for that, you can try it for 30 days. 30 days, guys. You can cancel at any time. You can pause your subscription at any time, and it's just $1 for the first 30 days. So use the link in the description here, and remember, sign up before the 4th if you would like to get it for $19 per month instead of $36.99. Okay, so anyway, that's the jazz to start with. Fatima, how are you going? Natalie, how are you going? I hope you guys are having a great night. Thura as well. Welcome to the live class, guys. I've got a bunch of questions here, all sorts of different questions about English. Before we get started in just a few moments, remember, if you guys have questions, just put them in the comments section below. Ask away. Ask as many questions as you would like. I'll answer the ones that I've got here, and then I will try to get to your questions, but I'll try and do them in order. So the sooner you ask those questions, the sooner I will get to them. All right, so the first question we have here is from Rocio. Thanks for the question, Rocio. What's the difference between spree, binge, and splurge? And could you explain how to use them in different contexts? All right, so a spree. A spree is a spell or sustained period of time or unrestrained activity in a period of time of a particular kind. So that's sort of confusing, but you could, if you go out there and repeatedly do something, say if I go out there and rob a bunch of different stores, the fact that I've done that multiple times and over a period of time makes it a crime spree. Okay, so there's a lot of crime it's happening repeatedly, it's a crime spree. If I go shopping and I go to all these different stores to buy things, I'm going on a shopping spree. If I go out and started killing people randomly, and there were multiple people that I killed, that would be a killing spree. So we often hear that collocated with crime, a crime spree, shopping, a shopping spree, and killing, a killing spree. Those were the three examples I could think of. Okay, so a spree, a spell or sustained period of unrestrained activity of a particular kind. A binge. Okay, so a binge is a period of excessive indulgence in an activity. So usually this is drinking or eating. So you could go binge drinking, and that is to drink a lot. You know, you're binging on the drinks, and that's using a binge, but it's using it as a verb, to binge. And you could binge on food. So you're binge eating, you're binge drinking, you're binging on food, you're binging on alcohol. Okay, and you could go on a weekend-long binge if you're just binging for the entire weekend. But yeah, a binge, unlike a spree, we can use to binge, we can make it a verb, to binge on something, okay? So it's kind of like a phrasal verb there, guys, where we use the word on to show the thing that's being binged upon, I guess. It's hard to sort of explain without using on, but that's showing what the subject is working on, is binging on, okay? So it shows what the object is when you say that. I'm binging on food, I'm binging on drinks. So a splurge, the last one here, a splurge is an act of spending a lot of money, okay? So you could go on a splurge and you're just spending as much money as you can on, say, gifts before Christmas. You're going on a pre-Christmas, before Christmas, splurge. And similar to a binge or to binge, we can use a splurge, we can use splurge as a verb. So we can splurge on something. So if I bought a new car that was very expensive, someone might say to me, how much did you splurge on that? Or, man, you splurged a lot on this car. You've spent a lot of money. You really splurged on this new car. Okay, so I hope that helps with a spree, a binge, and a splurge. Those are some really funny sounding words, especially splurge. Splurge. That's a very, very weird sounding word, but it's a cool one nonetheless. So I definitely recommend trying to use those guys in the coming week when you're speaking English. A spree, a binge, and a splurge. All right, we've got a question here from Pasquale. I hope Pasquale is going well. What is the difference between that and which? That and which. So these are conjunctions, okay? These join phrases. So you'll use one phrase and then you'll say that and it joins another phrase. Or you'll say one phrase with which and it joins another one. Or who and it joins another one, okay? So that, which, and actually who is the third one there in that kind of set of words. So that is used with what we call restrictive clauses. I had to look this up because I'm still learning the grammar of this sort of stuff. I kind of know how to use it, but I don't know the terms. But a restrictive clause is one that restricts the identity of the subject. So, for instance, the painting that was hanging on the wall in the foyer was stolen. Okay, so we say that the painting that was hanging on the wall because it's like we're thinking of there are many paintings in the house, but there is only one that is hanging on the wall, okay, in the foyer. So we use that to say out of all the paintings, we're talking about the one in the foyer. That is in the foyer on the wall. So that is when we use that, okay, and it's restricting the sense of everything to that painting. So that's why it's called a restrictive clause, because now we know, okay, it's the painting that's on the wall in the foyer. It's no other painting, that's the only one, but there are other paintings. So the painting that was hanging in the foyer was stolen. Multiple paintings in the house, but that restricts the painting to only the one in the foyer. So the couch was in the lounge room had broken. The couch that was in the lounge room had broken. That's another example. The couch that was in the lounge broke. There's multiple couches, but there's only one that is in the lounge room. Okay, so that's restrictive. That's a restrictive clause. That's when we use that. Which is a non-restrictive clause. Okay, so which, if we were to use these sentences, but this time use which, it's interesting or incidental information that isn't necessarily important to the main idea. So if I was to say the painting, which was hanging on the wall in the foyer, was stolen, the main sentence there is the painting was stolen. And then there's incidental information. The painting, which was on the wall in the foyer, was stolen. Okay, so this time there could be many paintings on the wall in the foyer, and it's just incidental, it's just extra information that the painting that was stolen happened to be one of these paintings on the wall. So those, it's kind of tricky, and to be honest, the good news is it doesn't really matter which one you use. It doesn't really matter, guys. Unless you are really trying to be specific about a single thing, that, and then the rest of the sentence, you're trying to give context as to where that thing was, that's when you might use that. But if you switch these in and out, people will still understand 99% of what you're trying to say, okay? So it's not that bad. The only little point here that I want to make about who, if you're talking about a person, you have to say who instead of that or which, okay? So if it is the man who is in the foyer, disappeared, you wouldn't say the man that is in the foyer or the man which is in the foyer. It's always that you have to use who, because that pairs with humans. The man who was in the foyer. He was the guy who was in the foyer. Okay, so I hope that helps, Pasquale. All right, we got another one from Miral. Is there any difference between used to and use to? Okay, so this is somewhat confusing because you guys might not pick up on the very subtle pronunciation. So I'm going to write it down so that you guys can see it in the comments. Used to, as in USED space to, versus used to, USE space TO. Okay, so those are the two things that Miral is asking about. So we use used to, and notice that I say use instead of use. We use used to plus a verb when we're talking about something that was habitually done in the past or that lasted for a very long time in the past. So for instance, I used to go to the beach every week. They used to have a dog as a pet. We used to live in France. Okay, so that's something that either lasted for a long time or was a habit in the past. Used to, used to. And we pronounce that with the use, it's a s sound, as opposed to the verb use, as like to use a tool, where it would sound like a Z, use. I used this to do something, okay? So when do we use used to without the D on the end though? That's the question. So we have USED, that's the past tense, and then we have the verb used to, USE space to. So we use used to when forming sentences that use the auxiliary verb did in there. So when we're talking about the past still, but now we've split these verbs up and we're using the auxiliary verb did to either ask a question or to negate that sentence. So for instance, you would say, I used to go to the beach every week. I used to, that's with a D. And you would say, I didn't used to go to the beach every week. And that would be use with no D. I didn't used to go. So this time it's the, I believe it's the infinitive of this verb. And again, you would say, did I used to go? Didn't I used to go? And it would be the same thing there, USE. They didn't used to have a dog as a pet. They didn't used to have a dog as a pet. Didn't they used to have a dog as a pet? So that's used to with no D. And we didn't used to live in France. Didn't we used to live in France? Did we used to live in France? Use in all of those cases that I just mentioned is with no D, okay? No D. But when you say I used to, they used to, we used to, all of those examples come with the D, USED, okay? And then I guess we can talk about the fact that you can use something to do something. So I might use a towel to dry myself. And in these cases, when I'm using the verb to use as the verb to mean, you know, to take, to hold, to deploy something like a hammer, I'm using a hammer, that's when we pronounce it with a Z sound, okay? I use my towel to dry myself. I used my towel to dry myself. So they're very subtle differences there, guys, but they're important because instantly when I hear use versus use, I know what you're saying. All right, Smitri's got a question here. What's the difference between then and than? This is a good one. This is a good one, and I will write this down for you again, guys, so that you can see. Then versus than. Then versus than, and native speakers get this wrong every now and then as well. Okay, so then is an adverb used to situate time events related to time. Then, T-H-E-N, then. So for instance, at a time in the past, I could say, back then, I used to go to the beach. Back then, you know, a time in the past, back then. Okay, so it can be used for a time in the past. It can also be used for meaning after that, next, or afterwards. Okay, so like I got up, then I had breakfast. I got up, then I had breakfast. And that again teaches us or tells us the order of these clauses in time. Okay, so then is associated with time. Than is a conjunction for making comparisons. I can hear a magpie outside, very loud. Than, T-H-A-N, is a conjunction for comparisons, and it has no single word synonyms. So this is a trick. If you can substitute something else in for the word then you know that it has to be then. If you can't substitute anything else in for the word than, you know it needs to be than if you're comparing two things. This hand is bigger than this hand, and now this hand is bigger than this hand. So for instance, my breakfast was bigger than your breakfast. Than, I'm comparing the two. Her high school was smaller than her university. Comparing the two. There were more questions than answers. There were more questions than answers. More questions, fewer answers, and that's why we use than. I guess the confusing part happens though when you have sentences like this. I'd rather see this film than that other one. So I would prefer to see this film. I would rather see this film than this other film. So I'm using than, T-H-A-N. It's a comparison. I'd rather this one than that one. But if I was to slightly change my pronunciation and use the word then, now it sounds like I would like to do this, and afterwards I would like to do this. So now I'll say the same sentence but with then, and see if you can get what I mean. I'd rather see this film than that other film, or that other one, than that other one. So that now is talking about order in time. I'd rather see this one, and then I'd like to see this one. So that's why it's important to know the difference between then and than. T-H-E-N, then, and it rhymes with pen, pen and then, hen, pen, then. That is related to time, either in the past or telling you that one thing happened and then another thing happened afterwards. And than, which I guess rhymes with hand, that air vowel sound, than is associated with comparisons. All right, Samira. Would is very confusing. Would is a very confusing word in English. Can you explain when you would use would? I saw a film yesterday. The actor said he wouldn't get it instead of saying he didn't get it. But the act happened in the past and got confused. Yeah, so that's tricky. Would is one of these tricky ones. Would is most known for being used for conditionals, but it can be used for a bunch of other things, guys. A bunch of other things, okay? So there's 5 key things that we can use the auxiliary verb would for, and I'll go through those just now. Okay, so Unreal or imagined situations. This is number one. We can use would for unreal or imagined situations. For example, I would love to visit Melbourne sometime in the future. It's not real yet, or it's imagined. I'm just thinking Melbourne's amazing and I would love to go to Melbourne. She would love to be a dancer. She's not a dancer yet. She's imagining she would love to do this in the future, maybe at one point, sometime, off in the distance. She wants to be a dancer in the future. She would like to be a dancer. She would like to be a dancer. And the third one is here, we would go, but we're too busy. And I guess that's a conditional clause. We would go, but we're too busy. Okay, so we would do this in the future, but at the moment we can't because we're too busy. So that's number one, unreal or imagined situations. 2, habitual actions in the past. So this is where it can get confusing. If you use used to, I used to go to the beach every day when I was a kid, you can actually use would as a synonym for used to. I would go to the beach every day as a kid. When I was a kid, I would go to the beach all the time, all the time. The trick here for those sorts of sentences and how to not confuse it with the conditional is that there's going to be context. People are going to say things like, when I was a kid, I would, and then go to the beach, all the time. In the 90s, that band would always play really loudly. Or last week, in fact, you wouldn't do it for something that close. It would have to be a long time ago, I think. But yeah, so that's how not to get confused with the conditional. There'll be things like in the 90s, back in the 100 years BC before Christ, people would wear this kind of clothing. People used to wear this kind of clothing. When I was a kid, I would go to the beach all the time. I used to go to the beach all the time. Okay, so that's the trick with that one, number 2. Number 3, it's the past tense of will. It's the past tense of will. And we use this for things like reported speech. So for instance, if one of you guys called me up and you said, sorry mate, I won't help you. Sorry mate, I will not help you. Or maybe, sorry mate, I will not be there tomorrow. I will not go to the beach with you. If you did that, you called me up and then I went and told someone what you said, I would say, he called me up just before and he said he wouldn't help me. He said he wouldn't come to the beach with me. He said, past tense, he said he wouldn't help. He said he wouldn't come to the beach. So we can use would in that case to be the past tense of will. Okay, so you call me and you say, I will not help you. That's direct speech. You're directly talking to me. I go away and say to someone else, and I'm reporting your speech using the past tense now. He said he wouldn't help. He said he wouldn't help. Okay, so that's how we can use it for number 3. Number 4 is the one that you'll probably all know, conditional sentences. So unreal or hypothetical situations in the second and third conditionals. For example, if I won the lottery, I would travel the world. And that's the second conditional. If I won the lottery, if this thing happened, so that's if I won the lottery, I'm using the past tense, but if that were to happen, if that were to come to pass, I would travel the world. I would do that thing. It would happen. It's imagined though. And then we have the third conditional, if I had won the lottery. So now we're talking about a period of time before another period of time. If I had won the lottery, I would have traveled the world. Okay, so we can use would in these cases for the conditional sentences. The very last one is using would not for refusing to do something. So for instance, I asked him if I could borrow his car. But he wouldn't lend it to me. He would not do this. So this time it's not really a conditional. It's the fact he didn't do this, but I'm using it as showing that he refused to do this thing. I asked if I could borrow his car, but he wouldn't let me borrow it. They wanted to help her, but she didn't want their help. She wouldn't let them help her. Okay, so again, it's refusing to do something and it's in the past tense. All right, I got a question here from Fatima. What's the difference between live or live as well as, oh, okay, so live as in the verb or the live as in the adjective. Okay, so we have live as the verb, live as the adjective. And I guess we also have life and lives as the nouns. Okay, so we can go through the differences there. So to live, the verb, means to remain alive, to exist, right? You've got a life, you're alive, you remain alive. So he'd rather live than die. When we're using the comparison than again, he'd rather live than die. I lived to the ripe old age of 95. I lived to the ripe old age of 95. We can also use the verb to live to mean make one's home in a particular place or with a particular person. So at the moment, I live with my family. If I was with my girlfriend, I could say I live with my girlfriend. We live together. I live in Melbourne. I live in Ocean Grove. I'm sure you guys know what to live means. If you're alive, so now we're talking about the adjective. You're alive, you're living, you're not dead. Okay, so he's alive. It can also be that someone is alert and active or animated. So I'm coming alive on video right now. So I'm going from being unanimated, I guess, not being active, to suddenly being alive. It's that I'm becoming more excited, more involved, I guess, more alive. Excuse me, guys. So what else have we got here? Live, living. So he has a few, live. See, even me, I have to use it in a sentence to know the pronunciation because it's spelt the same way. He has a few live animals in his house. Okay, so that means he has a few living animals in his house. We can use live animals to mean that they are alive. Okay, so he has a few live animals in his house. We can also use live for musical performances. If someone's playing some music right now in front of you, the music is being played live. It's like that music is alive in this moment. You're seeing it live. I love going to live gigs. I love going to live concerts. This music's always better when it's played live. We can also use it for connected to a source of electricity. So the connection going into my computer at the moment, charging my computer, is live. That is that there is electricity flowing through it. So it's live, okay? If there was no electricity, we could say it's dead. It's dead. The battery's dead. The battery's live. We can also use it for current or continuing interest or importance. Okay, so this would be like a discussion, could still be a live issue. So whether or not to allow illegal refugees to come to Australia directly is a live issue for the Australian government. So again, it's kind of like the conversation is still alive. We say it's a live conversation. And the last one is a life or two lives. These are sort of the condition of distinguishing animals or organisms from inorganic matter, like rocks. Okay, so rocks are not alive. They have no life. I'm a human, I'm alive, so I have a life. We can use it for the existence of an individual human being. I am one life. If I die in a disaster, that's one life lost. And the last one here is that your life is the period between when you're born and when you die. That is your entire life. Okay, that is your entire life. So I know they're quite confusing. To be honest, listen to this, look them up, try and write out some sentences and just get an understanding of where and when not to use these and where to use these, and it'll just come with context. That's the best way to learn this sort of stuff, especially when they're very close to one another. But yeah, apologies for the fact that Australian English, or just English in general, has really bad spelling, and you have words like live and live that are spelt the same way. I know that's incredibly confusing. Alright, so we have a question here from Alexander. Hi Pete, I would like to ask your explanation on the matter of I have had a hard day and I had a hard day. Although these two are pretty similar, but they mean different things. Okay, so I guess, Alex, what you're talking about here is the present perfect tense, I have had, or I have done, or I have been, and the past perfect tense, I had done, I had been. I know how confusing these ones are for you guys. So just one sec. There's people harassing me on Facebook. I need to close it, it's distracting me. All right, so the present perfect tense, for instance, I have been to France. She has left our house. They have bought a car. They have done this thing. We use the present perfect tense, and we've been talking about this a lot recently. The present perfect tense is used to talk about an event that started in the past and has continued for a period of time up to the present, so it's still affecting the present time, okay? The present perfect, that's why we're using the word present. It's still affecting the present. Imagine my head here on the screen is present time. The side over here is the future. The side over here is the past. If an event started in the past, but it's still going, or it's still having an effect onto the present time, or even slightly in front of the present, that's when we use the present perfect, okay? So, for instance, today, I've been awake for 12 hours. The day's still going, it's still in the present, I'm still awake, I haven't fallen asleep yet, so I can say I have been awake for that long. I have been awake all day. If it was tomorrow, I could say yesterday, I was awake for 12 hours, and now I'm using the simple past, okay? So that's the present perfect. Just think about the period of time you're talking about. Does it still include the present? I'm awake right now. I have been awake for 12 hours. Or is it only in the past? I was awake for 12 hours. I was awake, okay? The thing is completely finished. It's not going. So that's the difference there between the present perfect and the simple past. The confusing part comes in when we use the past perfect tense. All right, so for instance, she hadn't finished, she hadn't, what am I doing here? Okay, sorry, got the wrong examples. So I had finished high school when I met her. She had studied English for 1 year before she became fluent. We had lived in France until 2015 when we moved back to Australia. So that in those cases, I'm using the past perfect tense, and then I'm using the simple tense, the simple past tense there. And both events that I'm talking about in each of those examples happen in the past, but I use the past perfect to show which one of those things happened before the other one. Okay? So that's the key reason that we use the past perfect. So it's used to talk about an event that started and finished in the past, and it's usually there to show that that event that started and finished in the past happened before another event. So for instance, I could say, this morning I had breakfast before I had lunch. Okay, so if you imagine my head again is right now, dinner time, lunch is here, breakfast is before lunch over here in the time. If I want to talk about when I had breakfast and show that it was before lunch, although the names of those things obviously show which one's before which, I use the past perfect. I had breakfast, and then I had lunch. Okay, so it gives context to which way these things happened. So for those 3 sentences that I said, I had finished high school when I met her. In that case, it shows that I had finished high school. High school started in the past. It had happened for a period and then it stopped, and it was interrupted by me meeting her, which is what happened next. So that's why I say I met her after I had finished high school. The other example here was she had studied English for a year. So in the past, she had studied for a year before she became fluent. So fluent is obviously more recently. She became fluent, but before then she had studied for a year. Okay, so that's the basic takeaway message here, guys. The present perfect talks about something that happened in the past and is the period of time's still going. You know, it includes the present. The simple past talks about something that happened in the past, just, you know, a one-off event, whatever. It started, done in the past. And then we start using the past perfect when we want to put it in the context of another thing that happened in the past, and we want to place something before something else. So just remember, past perfect, further back, simple past, closer to present. So anytime you talk about things, if you use the past perfect, it makes it sound like that happened first, and then you use the simple past to show that the other thing that you're talking about happened after that. Okay, so those are the key things with those tenses. I hope that helps, guys. I know how confusing they can be. Starting to lose my voice. All right, we've got one more here, guys, and I think it actually covers a question that has already been asked. So yeah, Daniela asked about might and may and when to use those, and this question answers that question. So Prashant asks, when do I use may and when do I use might? My initial reaction here was to say it doesn't matter. You can use them interchangeably, which is true, but then when I dived in and had a look, as usual, I found out that I was incorrect and that there are circumstances where you would use might and you would not use may. All right, so we can go through some of these, guys. I guess a caveat is, for a lot of these things, their may and might are pretty high-level English. I wouldn't worry too much if you're not using them. Just as a note, don't focus too heavily on perfecting this kind of thing. I would worry more about speaking. But let's go through it. All right, so we can use may to express what's possible, factual, or could be factual. So he may lose his job. It's a possibility. And we can sort of switch it in with he could use his job. And this is, I guess, what I was wanting to get at. You can often use could or can in place of may or might. He may lose his job. He could lose his job. It could happen. It's a possible thing. It may not happen. We may go on vacation. We may not. And two, you might hear this all the time. We may, we might not. Or see, and I use both. We may not. We might not. Because it's showing uncertainty. It's possible, but whether or not it happens, don't know. So we may go on vacation. We may not. Who knows? I may have dessert after dinner. I'm undecided. It's possible, I may not, but I may. So we can use it to express something that's possible, factual, or could be factual. May. Might. Okay, so might is used to express what is hypothetical, counterfactual, or remotely possible. That to me feels like it's very, very specific, but let's go through some of these examples. If you hurry, you might get there on time. If you hurry, you might get there on time. If you hurry, you may get there on time. See, if someone said either of those to me, I wouldn't realize that you were making a quote-unquote mistake grammatically. So if you hurry, you might get there on time. If I had shown up on time, I might have kept my job. So there you go. There's another example of us using the past perfect and then I guess the present perfect. So we're saying that if I had shown up, I might have kept my job. So what's the other example? If I win the lottery, I might buy a Ferrari. Okay, so again, we're using might here to express hypothetical, counterfactual, or remotely possible things. But to be honest, I would switch may and might around. I wouldn't even realize as a native speaker that you shouldn't use one or you should use the other. So again, don't stress. We can use might as the past tense of may. So this is where I think it becomes important to know the distinction. He may go to the movies tonight. That's the present tense. He may go. He may go. He might have gone to the movies. He might have gone to the movies yesterday. That's the past tense now, okay? He might have gone. But you don't know. You're unsure. It's a possibility. They may leave when it rains. They might have left when it rained. So there you go. May for the present tense, might for the past tense. The last one here is when asking permission. And this again, it's a sort of cheat. It's a trick. To be honest, you can just use can. So for instance, you can have another piece of cake. You may have another piece of cake. We would not use might. You might have another piece. That would sound weird to me in this case. So when talking about permission, if you say you can have another piece, I'm allowing you to do it. I'm giving you permission. You can have another piece. You may have another piece. That is the kind of language that parents would use with their kids, I think. So it would sound almost patronizing, I feel, if you were to speak to someone like that who, say, was working for you. May I have lunch? You may. It sounds like one of you is like the authority and the other one is effectively the slave, the child. You need permission from this person. He might, oh, what am I doing here? May I go to the toilet? Another perfect example. So a kid in class might ask his teacher, teacher, may I go to the toilet? But again, you could just say, can I go to the toilet? If you were to say, might I go to the toilet, that's almost like saying, it's not asking permission. It's like you're saying, I'm thinking about doing it. So it would sound like you're telling someone, I might go to the toilet. So that's why we use may there instead of might. And that's the example here at the end. Might I ask when the movie starts? Might I ask for a favor? It's very posh. It sounds very strange to say that now. Most people would never say that. Might I ask for when the movie starts? Might I do this? Yeah, it's because as well, by having said that, you have asked. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like you're asking permission to ask this question, and so you've just asked the question that you're asking permission to ask. Anyway, so that's might versus may. Shall is kind of the same, except again, it's not very common. You might just use should or will. You know, should we go to the beach? Shall we go to the beach? It's interchangeable with that. But shall tends to only be used with I and we. Shall we go to the beach? Shall I go to the beach? And it's kind of like you're asking, is this something that I should do? And to be honest, I would just use should. Posh, okay, Vivian wants to know what posh means. Posh is like, it's a way of describing how people who are trying to differentiate their class as being upper class from lower class, it's how the upper class would behave and speak. If they're trying to show you that they are better than you, that they are more educated than you, that they are of a higher class status, then they would tend to behave in a posh manner. They would have a posh accent. They would have posh possessions. They would speak using very posh grammar. Might we do this? Shall we do this? Etc. Okay, so that's the deal there. All right, so let me go back and have a look at some of these questions that you guys have asked. All right, where are we? Okay, so Akan, how did you decide to teach English and what was the trigger for that? That's a good question. I decided to teach English because no one was teaching Australian English. So I had started to learn French when I started teaching English. There you go, there's me using the past perfect and then the present perfect. I had started learning French, or I had been learning French. For a year or two I was learning French, and I had all these friends that I was learning French with that were living in Australia, and they said, what resources are there for people wanting to learn Australian English? And I said, well, I'm using all these ones for French. Surely there must be something out there for for English, you know, for French speakers. So I went and looked and there was nothing out there. So that's when I decided to make a podcast called Aussie English, Teaching Australian English. I had just wanted to help people and thought I could do it. So I'd been listening to a podcast called Français Authentique. C'est un podcast en français. It's a podcast in French. And he had this style. He liked to talk about an expression each week. He would discuss how to use it and then do a little pronunciation exercise. And I kind of just expanded on how he did his classes were laid out. I thought it was a very good way of teaching English. And that's why now in the Aussie English classroom, I have the expression episodes and then all the extra learning material that reinforce the expression episodes from Aussie English. So that's how I got started, and that's why I'm so passionate about it now. I know how difficult it is to learn Australian English, given that there are no resources out there to help you to do so. You know, it's so much easier if you go to Britain or if you go to the States. It's a lot easier to learn their dialects of English, and so I guess I took it upon myself. That is, like, I took the burden upon myself to teach you guys Australian English, because I thought that it was something I could do, and I thought it was something that would help. And it is definitely satisfying, guys. So that's how I ended up here. Okay, Jack asked, what about used to, if you're used to something? That's a good one. Used to playing something, used to doing something. So that means you're accustomed to it. So there's another use for used to, but with the D. I'm used to this, I'm used to that. Except I guess in this case, it is acting as an adjective. It's not the conjugation of a verb. So I'm used to going outside, I'm used to living in hot weather. I'm used to Australia. I'm accustomed to it. It's what I am, and I'm trying to thinking in French, habituated to. I don't know if we use that in English, but it's what you're used to, what you're accustomed to. It's a habit. All right, what else have we got here? Oh yeah, Rocio was making a point. Then, the word then, T-H-E-N, can be used at the end of a sentence. I'll see you tomorrow then. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like an artifact or a bit of weird English, like well or oh. You know, those bits that we kind of interject and put into sentences that don't really mean anything specific, but kind of add a bit of feeling to it. Oh, I guess I'll see you tomorrow then. So why would I say that over I guess I'll see you tomorrow? I guess it's kind of like, oh, therefore. Oh, okay. As a result of whatever's just happened, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, okay then. I'll see you tomorrow. As a result of that, I'll see you tomorrow then. So that's why we add it there. I love those little bits of English because when you learn those sorts of things, it makes you sound a lot more like a native. If you start putting in things like I was thinking about this and like I did this. The same with, you know, I was thinking, you know, should we go outside, you know, because it's a nice day, you know. I mean, you have to be wary not to do it too much, but to add it in every now and then, and you'll probably do this eventually as you become fluent. Adding those bits of sort of fillers, they're called, things that fill gaps in the sentences, definitely up your fluency level and make you sound a lot more like a native. Saying words like, well, at the start of a sentence, or I was like, or you know, those sorts of things, even though native speakers are taught to do them as little as possible, even though that's the case, we still do them all the time. Foreign speakers are taught not to do them at all. I think there's an argument there for doing them at least a little bit, okay? Thinking about it, doing it a little bit. All right, Rodrigo, what's the difference between to think and to believe? Oh, that's a really good question. Think versus believe. You put me on the spot. All right. The difference lies in the nature of truth. Truth value predicted of the complement clause by the... Think denotes lesser confidence. Believe denotes more confidence. Okay, so I believe this is the case. So there you go. If I was to say I believe this is the case, it shows that I am more confident than if I were to say I think that this is the case. I reckon this is the case. I believe this is the case. So I think is here, I reckon is here. Sort of like, yeah, this is probably it. I think, I reckon. I believe this is the case. I believe this is so. And then the one that would show you are 100% certain would be, I know this is the case. I know this is the case. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, at least I believe it's the case, or I think this is it. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I think this is the case. So that's the difference between think and believe there. And I love these kinds of questions because I never think about them. It's good when I get to see English through your eyes. Okay, so Daniela asked about shall, might and may. Fatima, thank you for your answer. Pete, no worries. Ruchi, is it correct to say the men who tried to destroy her were never prosecuted? Prosecuted, I think is the word there. You've written procuted? Procuted? I don't know that word, and you've quoted, apparently that's a quote from Oprah Winfrey, but I've never heard procute. I think it would be prosecute. And to prosecute someone means to take them to a judge. They have to go to court. They have to have a lawyer to represent themselves. And the prosecution, the people accusing them of a crime, are prosecuting them. And if they get convicted of the crime, they've been prosecuted. So to prosecute, that's a really good English verb, okay? Jack, what is the first step to teach English as your point of view, and how, especially to those who are non-native speakers? The first step, do you mean teaching them English? I guess it depends your level. If you're a brand new beginner, I would not be using a teacher like me. I would be using resources, online, books. I would be using something that shows you the beginnings, the basics of a language. So for instance, I'm always looking for my phone. I'm using my phone to record this video. If I use a new language, I will start by using apps like Duolingo or Memrise that teach me, say, the 2,000 most common words. Okay, and there was a good example of a filler word, say. Okay, say is kind of a way of saying it. For example, say, do you want to go out later? For example, say. That's a good one to try and use. So yeah, beginners, I would say, don't use this sort of resource. It could be too overwhelming. You're sort of diving in the deep end. You're taking on too much at once. Intermediate level to advanced, I would say definitely use these kinds of resources, but I'm much more of the mind, I think, that you need to treat learning a language like filling in the gaps in your knowledge. So once you get to the point of being an intermediate learner, of being an advanced learner, it's almost like, imagine you're a spider. Imagine on the screen here, you're making a spider web. Okay, so you're making a spider web on this screen, and you want to eventually fill the entire screen, and that is that your English would be as good as mine, okay? A native speaker. Imagine a native speaker has a web, if they were a spider, that covers the entire screen, and no insect can fly through that web. They can't get through because there are no gaps, okay? There are no little holes, there are no gaps in the web. As a beginner, you have no web. You're a spider, you have to climb up the side of the screen here, and you have to start making your web. So imagine every time you stretch that web out, you've learnt a word, you've learnt some grammar, and you're slowly but surely getting that scaffolding of what will be the web in the end. Once you're at the intermediate phase, I'm confusing those two words. Once you're an intermediate learner, you've got the basic structure of a web, but there are still loads of spots where insects can fly through. And I guess in this metaphor, an insect is a word, an expression, some grammar that you don't understand that gets through your web. That is your understanding of English. Once you get to advanced, you've got a really good scaffolding of a web, and you've started filling it out. So you've started filling it out, and now flies are getting caught all the time. But every now and then, there's a hole and a fly goes straight through. So that's the metaphor there, okay? I see it as creating a web, like you're a spider. Learning a language from scratch. First, you've got to set up the scaffolding onto which you can start learning expressions and everything else, and words and grammar. Intermediate stage, you're starting to just make sure, okay, there's a massive chunk on the screen here missing. I need to put a web across here and start filling this bit out. Oh, there's a hole down here. Okay, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to start filling this part out. And so you have to, this is why it's so good to make mistakes, because every time you make a mistake, you notice where there's a hole. You get to see, oh, a fly just went through that hole. I need to go over there and fill that hole in. But that's the battle. So that's a long way of me saying effectively, the things that I would suggest for all English learners when I do teaching, when I'm coaching my students, is you guys have to be aware of your mistakes and just start filling those gaps in. Constantly look for mistakes, look for errors. Every time you make a mistake, it's XP, it's experience points, and you're leveling up. So go out there and make as many mistakes as you can. But I guess for materials, how would I teach? The first step to teaching it, yeah, my first step would be use any material that you enjoy and use it as a way of finding holes in your web that is English. So try and find words, expressions, start using them, and just use resources as a way of finding things to practice and to perfect, okay? But just to have fun. So I hope that answers your question. Fatima wants to know how long I've been teaching English. That's a good question. 2 years, I think, Fatima. Maybe 2.5 years. I started in 2015. At the end of 2015, I believe, is when I started Aussie English. You'll have to go back. In fact, I can probably search Aussie English episode 001. There you go. The very first episode of the Aussie English podcast was posted on March the 1st, 2016. So I started this at the start of 2016. So it hasn't even been 2 years yet. I was wrong. Okay, so there you go. March the 1st was the very first episode of Aussie English. Okay, Vivian. How can I use the past when something has happened? For example, I went to New Zealand last year, or I had been to New Zealand. Could you explain? Okay, so that's the same thing that we were talking about before with the present perfect, the simple past, and then the past perfect. When you say I went to New Zealand last year, instantly, because you've used last year tells me the period of time's finished. It's over. So instantly you have to use the simple past. Went to New Zealand last year. It's like last week, yesterday, 50 years ago. All of those periods are in the past. They can't include the present. They don't include the present, so we tend to use the simple past. I went to New Zealand last year. Perfect. I had been to New Zealand. That in and of itself needs more context. Because you've used the past perfect, I'm waiting for something else. I had been to New Zealand, and then I'm waiting for something that happened after you had been to New Zealand. So that is, as soon as you say that, it tells me, okay, she's about to say something else that happened afterwards. So that's what's happening in my mind, cognitive linguistics wise. I had been to New Zealand when I was 15. I was 15. I was in New Zealand, or had been there before, or when, up to that point, but this thing happened first. I was 15. Okay? So yesterday I had been cleaning my room. Yesterday I was cleaning my room when someone interrupted me. Okay, so when something else happened. But yeah, the basic thing there, past perfect, as soon as you start using that, you need to follow it up with something else. Okay, or if it's on its own, it needs to be in the context of something someone else has said. Okay, so for instance, someone might say to you, what had you done before you were 15? And that's when you could answer, oh, I had been to New Zealand, you know? So you need to give it context. What is the first step to... okay, Jack, I think you're posting the same question. Gee, any Aussie TV shows so we can go through daily use of language? Aussie TV shows. See, this is tough for me. I don't really watch too many Aussie TV shows. At the moment, I'm getting sucked into Vikings, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, and they're all American. Let me see. I think someone... Yeah, okay. Glitch, Rake, and Offspring are 3 TV shows on Netflix that Rocio recommends. Glitch, Rake, and Offspring. I also like the TV show Round the Twist. Brilliant show. The first season's on YouTube. I've seen that up there. Sea Change is another really good show that you can watch. And then obviously, if you watch TV now and you've got a connection, you can watch things like Home and Away and Neighbours. And they're, you know, melodramas where people are just, you know, it's like the Daily Show and nothing ever gets resolved. There's always drama. And you can watch that and it's all just dialogue, people chatting to each other with Australian accents. And they're on Channel 7 and Channel 10 on the TV, so they're free. Oh, what else have we got here? Okay, Vivian, how can I use did? I've learned that I just use it in the past, but I met a guy who sent me a message like, did you mind to meet me tomorrow? You're right, as soon as you use did, it's talking about the past. But in that sentence, for instance, if he says, did you mind if, and then finishes it, he's talking about whether or not you minded. So he's talking about, did it bother you? And he's saying did to show that it's in the past. So you could say, do you mind if we meet tomorrow? And that's using the present tense. Do you mind? Is it okay if we meet tomorrow? That's me asking right now, does it bother you? Does it bother you if we meet tomorrow? Do you mind? But if I'm asking about your state of mind in the past, did it mind you yesterday? Did you mind yesterday, or did it bother you yesterday or earlier today or any time in the past? Yeah, so you can use did, you can use do. It's just you're asking about the person's frame of mind right now, do you mind? Or you're asking about their frame of mind in the past, even if the thing hasn't happened yet, did you mind if we do this? Okay, so did will always be referring to the past. Which site do you usually use to consult your words and vocab? See, that's a difficult question. So I use just Google, to be honest. The best thing that I find, and I'll see if I can show you this here, guys. So for instance, definition, vocab. I'll pick up my camera, see if I can show you my screen. I tend to just write definition and then the word, and then I get up here on the screen the definitions with example sentences. And you can even play this.
Vocabulary. Vocabulary.
Although that is a British accent. Vocabulary. Vocabulary. That's a British accent. So that's what I tend to do if I'm looking for definitions. I use Google. You can use Google Translate, obviously. And there's a really good website called Reverso that I really recommend. Reverso is a really good website for finding sentences and lots of them using a certain thing that you've searched, a word, a phrase, whatever it is. You'll get a load of different sentences in English as well as maybe your native language if it's on the website. So Reverso. Reverse with an O on the end instead of an E. R-E-V-E-R-S-O. Smeetri. The first time you're here, but a bit late. Oh, you do well. Hopefully you can watch it from the start again. Rodrigo, thanks, no worries. Alvaro, how are you going, mate? I hope you're well. What else are we going? So I feel like a spider girl. Yeah, that's it, G. That's it. All right, Lima, have a sip of water, Pete. Your voice is cracking. It is, I know. I just realised that I have no drink here, so I just have to suck it and see. I just have to go. Lourdes, hey from Madrid, Upper Middle Bogan, another recommendation. Is that a TV show? I'll have to suss that out. I'll have to have a look at it. You've never been teaching English before. I know, well, it's one of those things, Fatima. I think you can be good at anything, you just have to start trying. I wasn't brilliant at teaching English. I still feel like I'm not brilliant at teaching English. There's a lot that I need to work on. There's a lot that I need to improve, but the best way to do that is just by doing it. You know, get out there, create content, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. It's exactly the same for English. You're not going to get good at English by not practicing. So just get out there and do it. Get out there and do it. And you guys are actually teaching me at the moment. Every time you guys ask me a question and I can't answer it or I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I have to go online and I have to look it up. And then I learn that answer and then I answer it to you and now I know that information. So you guys are actually helping me learn how to teach English. So I should thank you guys, okay? Deanna, if I say thanks for taking my books, okay, you gotta say thanks for doing something, the gerund. Thank you for something. And if we want to use a verb instead of something, thank you for something, we have to use the gerund. The secret to this, the trick that I tell my students is if the word something goes in there, thing has ing on the end. So if we want to use a verb, instead of saying take, do, play, we put the ing on the end from something. So thanks for playing, thanks for going, thanks for teaching, thanks for saying. But if I say thanks for taking my books before, I say, well, yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking there, Diana. See if you can ask that again and I'll try and answer it for you. I watched Home and Away and Neighbours in New Zealand. Is it the same version? It will be the same version, Ruchi. I found out a funny thing too about Neighbours and Home and Away. There aren't enough people in Australia watching those TV shows that would pay for the cost of the TV shows. It's actually the channels in England, in Britain, that pay for those TV shows to keep being made in Australia. So the people over in Britain love these TV shows and that's where the bulk of these people watching these TV shows come from. They're not Australians. So how weird is that? Okay, what have we got here? Do you mind explaining how I can use the word far at the end of the context? So again, I would need an example sentence, Vivian. I'm not 100% sure what you're asking. See if you can give me an example sentence. What's the difference between then and than? We've done that, Smitri. I answered your question. It's in here. So listen to the podcast episode or listen or watch this episode earlier and you will see the difference between then and than. Could you explain how to use to and for? Vivian, that's a confusing one. Those are ones with so many different definitions that I would actually have to go away and look that up. But I'll see if I can do that off the top of my head, Vivian. So for instance, Two tends to show direction. So you've got something here, you've got something here, and something goes to the other thing. So if I was here and you were here and I threw a ball, I throw the ball to you, okay? I throw it to you. If I threw the ball for you, it's that I do that task and you don't have to do it. I'm doing it on your behalf. I'm throwing the ball for you. So it's kind of like, Vivian, give me the ball. It's okay, I'll do it for you. I'll do it on your behalf. You give me the ball, I throw it, and I threw the ball for you, okay? As opposed to you. So at least in the context of things like phrasal verbs, I think that is probably going to be, at least when it's using something like someone, you're doing something for someone. In that case, it means you're doing that thing on their behalf. You're doing it so they don't have to, but they can benefit from it. I'll make this video for you guys. Whereas if I was to send this video and I want you guys to receive this video, I'm sending the video to you guys. I want it to go from me to you, and I'm recording it for you, meaning that I'm doing it so that you can benefit from it. So I'm sure there are other examples of how these things differ. For instance, if you're looking for something, you're searching for something, but that's the best answer I can give you right now, because there will be a number of definitions that I can't think of straight away. What else have we got here? Geez, Lima, Bachelor and Bachelorette, what's wrong with you? Those are horrible TV shows. Why are you watching that? How is your day so far? This is it. So far. Okay, so far would mean from when it started to the point that you are at right now. So think far as in like distance, but when you say so far, it can be length, it can be duration in time, or it could be distance in space. So, for instance, if we were running a race and it had been 1 hour and we had run 10 kilometers, I could say, so far, we've been running for 1 hour. And I could also say, so far, we've run 10 kilometers. So it's talking about from when it started to the point you're at currently, and it's talking about the quantity of time or the quantity of distance in those cases. So it's usually a measurement of something. How was your day so far? You're asking, since my day started up until now, how was it? Was it good? How was your day so far? How have you guys been so far? If someone was asking you guys about your journey learning English, they might say to you, so how has your journey learning English been? How has it been? Because it's still going. We're using the present perfect. How has your journey learning English been so far? So from when you began to right now, how has it been so far? So far. So yeah, that's it, guys. I think I'm going to finish up there because, as Lima said, my voice is running out. I hope you guys had a really fun time in this episode. I guess, again, to finish up, I'm going to close down the Aussie English Facebook group, and then I'm going to add in all of the members from the Aussie English Classroom, guys. If you want access to that, because we're going to be organising speaking classes through there like this, except where you can actually talk to me and to other students. This is what I really want to focus on, getting you guys talking. You can join up to be a member, to be a student in the Aussie English Classroom. Just use the link in the description above, and it'll only be $1 for your first 30 days. For the first month, you can try it. You can pause your subscription. You can cancel your subscription at any time. 30 days for $1, and then after that, it'll be $19.99. Okay, that's the current price. But after this Sunday, when Monday starts next week, the price will go up from $19.99 to $36.99 per month. Okay, this will not affect current members. So if you sign up before this time, you will never pay $36.99. You will only ever pay the current rate. So that's my way of saying thank you to all of you guys who have stuck with the Aussie English Classroom. We did an entire year of Aussie English Classroom expression episodes and all the bonus context. What have we got here? I'd like to know if you have a personal class so as I can speak. I do, Vivian. So I do personal stuff. I teach as well, just one-on-one. We can definitely do that too. I will put a link in the description for my class information too. But we'll be working on the Aussie English classroom as well to see how I can get you guys working in groups as well as working with me on the content that comes out on every single Sunday. So join up now, guys. It's $1. You can try it for a month. If it's not your thing, you can cancel at any time. And if it is your thing, you will save $17 a month at the current rate, $19.99. Anyway, I've been rabbiting on for the last 70 minutes. I hope you guys have an amazing night. Thank you so much for coming to class. Thank you so much for all of your awesome questions. And I will see you next week on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Melbourne time. Peace out, guys.